Phil Lowe, the Reserve Bank Governor, said yes, international factors were driving the decision, but he also pointed to domestic factors as well. And with that in mind, what responsibility do you take, does the government take for this rate rise?
Well, ultimately, what we're seeing is the normalisation of monetary policy, just as we saw the normalisation of fiscal policy. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone as they understand international markets, and they've seen other central banks move globally in the same way that the Central Bank of Australia has done. You're absolutely right, Michael. The Reserve Bank did say that the main drivers of yesterday's rate rise were international global factors, and particularly what that means is that the COVID pandemic has led to supply-side disruptions, which have increased freight costs by up to fivefold. And we've also seen the impact of the war in Ukraine with a spike in commodity prices, not just fuel, but also wheat and other commodities. Now, with respect to domestic challenges that we face, the biggest issue for employers today is how do they get more workers? And that is one of the challenges that we're seeking to meet with more than $3.5 billion set aside in the budget to create 800,000 new training places. What we're seeking to do is make it easier for workers to move between states to take jobs. And obviously we've got skilled workers coming into our country as well. So that will help meet some of those supply side constraints, including our massive $120 billion infrastructure plan and rollout, which is actually creating a more productive economy.
But do you take any responsibility at all? Any?
Well, our responsibility is for the economy more broadly, and whether it's interest rate changes or whether it's the fall in the unemployment rate or whether it's the growth numbers, we take responsibility right across the economy for the factors that we can control.
OK, the Reserve Bank has also pointed to inflation rising to 6%. It's currently at 5.1%. How did your government, how did Treasury get it so horribly wrong in forecasting where cost of living pressures are actually going in this country around the kitchen table?
Well, we are seeing higher than expected inflation, and as you say, yesterday they pointed to 6%. I point out to you that it's 6.7% in Canada and 6.9%
We're talking
New
about
Zealand.
Australia, though. People don't buy bread and vegetables in Canada. Let's talk about Australia, and I'll ask the question again. Why did you get it so horribly wrong? Is the government that out of touch?
Well, it's the Treasury and Finance that reaffirmed the forecast with respect to inflation, unemployment, just a couple of weeks ago. And what we do know is that the international environment is changing very rapidly. But they also yesterday said that the unemployment rate would go to 3.5%. That's lower than what we had in the budget at 3.75%. We make a whole series of forecasts in the budget, whether it's inflation, whether it's unemployment, whether it's growth numbers, or indeed whether it's commodity prices. Those estimates, those forecasts, Michael, are based on the best available information to us.
We saw this rate rise happen in an election cycle in 2007. We all saw what happened to the then Prime Minister, John Howard. Are you worried this rate rise effectively is the death knell for the Morrison government?
I actually think that people understand both the global and the domestic factors at play. They also understand that the Morrison government has steered the economy through the biggest economic shock since the Great Depression. It's easy for us as we sit here and the economy's recovering faster than any major advanced economy in the world to forget what it was like back in March and April 2020 when 1.4 million Australians either lost their jobs or saw their working hours reduced to zero. As night follows day, the Labor Party will continue to politicise this. They were criticising us when interest rates went down. Now they're criticising us when interest rates go up. And yesterday, Moody's came out publicly and said it was completely incorrect for the Labor Party to politicise the interest rate movement yesterday because it was simply reflecting an economy that was normalising. And that's the key point for people to understand.
OK, let's go to the battlefield seat of Kooyong. Monique Ryan, the independent candidate for Kooyong, says her 87-year-old mother-in-law is receiving, in her words, unwanted and distressing phone calls from strangers after you mentioned her mother-in-law in your campaign launch over the weekend. Do you owe Monique Ryan's mother-in-law, indeed Monique Ryan, an apology for bringing her family into the political campaign?
No, I don't. And if that is what is occurring, then of course that is not a good thing. But what I can tell you is that I met a very nice lady on the street who volunteered the fact that she was voting for me, then volunteered the fact that she was Monique Ryan's mother-in-law, and then very clearly, word for word, when I asked her why is she supporting me, she said, because you know what you're doing and you are a nice person. Now, it's been subsequently told to me by numerous people that she's had exactly the same conversation with them. In fact, she said that if I'm successful in the election, she'll have them over for champagne. Now, that's what she's telling people.
But should you have brought her into the campaign? Isn't there this unwritten rule that all's fair in love and war between the candidates, but leave the families out of the campaign?
Well, I note that Monique Ryan and Ted Bayou's son have been front and centre trying to promote him against his father when he wrote an article explaining why he was supporting me and obviously why it was supporting the Liberal Party. So I think people should be very careful here when they start throwing stones.
Right. What, is that a threat?
No, I think people will weigh up all those sort of claims and counterclaims and actually look at who's trying to politicise whom.
OK, so you have absolutely no regrets about bringing this 87-year-old woman, the mother-in-law of Monique Ryan, into your campaign?
I have absolutely no regrets about telling the truth of a conversation, word for word, what was relayed to me on the street. And dare I say it, that has been relayed to many people in the community, not just myself.
OK, when's the Prime Minister joining you on the hustings in Kooyong?
Well, he already has. As you know, we went to a religious service at a local synagogue, and no doubt he has many competing requests on his time.
It's a pretty key seat. I'm sure he does, and I know he does, and you know full well. Yours is a very key seat. You are a potential future Liberal Party leader and Prime Minister if the government's re-elected. Why won't the Prime Minister campaign with you, go to local shops in the suburbs of Kew and Camberwell, side by side with you and speak to voters?
Well, Michael, thanks for that vote of confidence, but I think I'm the best advocate for myself in my local area.
What are you afraid of? Why are you scared to bring the Prime Minister into Kooyong?
I'd put it to you to the contrary. I'd say to you, I am the best person to sell the government's message, to meet my own local constituents and to be out there campaigning myself, as I have been doing for the last 3 years in my local area. I have to say I've never taken my local area for granted. It's been a privilege to represent them for the last 12 years. I've fought hard for local infrastructure projects. I've fought hard for local community organisations. I've fought hard to support our 55 schools.
Why won't you get the Prime Minister to say just that on your behalf? He is, of course, the leader of the country, the leader of your party, in those suburbs in Kooyong.
Well, there's 151 seats in the country, and he's already been to my seat, and I can tell you...
But that wasn't, it was a visit, as you say, quite rightly, to celebrate Passover. It wasn't a full campaign stop in terms of going to shops and speaking to voters on the street.
Can I just tell you once again, I think I'm the best advocate for myself and for the Liberal Party in my own seat. I'm looking forward to debating Monique Ryan. In fact, I would like to have debated her as well in another Channel studio, but she refused to do so. She's a former long-standing member of the Labor Party. She sought to conceal it. She won't tell our local community how she will vote on the other side of election in the event of a hung parliament. I think that people of Kooyong deserve a bit better.
We're just about out of time, but integrity is one of the key platforms that Monique Ryan is campaigning on. Do you agree with the Prime Minister that the New South Wales ICAC is a kangaroo court?
Well, again, he will explain his comments. What I would say is that...
Do you agree with the Prime Minister that the ICAC in New South Wales is a kangaroo court? Yes or no?
Well, no, I would put it to you like this, Michael. I think that the ICAC has produced results where good people have left office without convictions being made and without, huge amounts of evidence.
Would you use the words kangaroo court to describe that body?
I would use different words, and what I would say...
So are you worried that the Prime Minister, are you angry with the Prime Minister for using those words? Because integrity, a stronger anti-corruption body, is a key issue in your seat, as you well know.
Look, we'll all use our own words to explain our own positions. What I can tell you is that I support a Commonwealth Integrity Commission. We have a model for doing so. It's got a public sector division. It's got a law enforcement division. I put more than $100 million in the budget towards its establishment. It would have greater powers than a Royal Commission, and I would welcome one. But it's got to be the right model, and it's not got to, in terms of having people proven guilty before, when they're not.
OK, Josh Frydenberg, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.